to take my stand. Yeah, I am a roaring lamb. I am a roaring lamb, and the time has come to take my stand. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Donna Skell.
And I'm Tiffany Ross.
Welcome to Roaring Lambs. Imagine this. You've been brought up in a Hindu family, and at age 4, you witness the suicide attempt of your beloved father. And then God appears to you. But as you grow older, you investigate and chase after every kind of spiritual avenue, from Scientology to witchcraft. But our good Father doesn't let you go. Stay tuned for an amazing story.
This episode of Roaring Lambs is brought to you by LifeStoriesCompany.com.
Have you ever looked at the underside of a tapestry? All knots and loose threads and ugly and chaotic? Well, that's a lot of times what our lives look like. But God sees the upper side, and He sees the finished product. And our guest today, our roaring lamb today, is Trupti Desai. Trupti was born in Zimbabwe to immigrant parents. She has traveled all over the world and witnessed the wonders of God. Trupti and her family, her 3 daughters, currently live in Texas. And I just can't wait till you hear this whole story. So welcome, Trupti.
Thank you.
So glad to have you on Roaring Lambs. And all stories have a beginning.
Yes.
And I just shared a little bit about your beginning, but tell us more.
Yeah, I was definitely born in Zimbabwe in Africa. I was born in a really small town, didn't even have a traffic light. And when I was born, it was during apartheid. So there was a segregation of races, and so even the hospital that I was born in, my mom had to deliver me in a totally separate room. And so I was separated from birth, literally. My first home was like literally in the bush, Donna and Tiffany. We had like the storefront where my mom and dad would sell like sodas or, you know, just the general stuff that people would need. And we lived behind the store. And there was even a well outside. And so that was the beginning of my life here on earth. And it was just a really interesting upbringing overall, because, you know, you're in Africa, you're Indian. I think we were the only Indian family at that time. And we weren't allowed to live in specific areas, which is why, you know, we ended up living, you know, behind a storefront. And so I even remember it vividly. I just remember the well. I remember running up and down like the back of the storefront. You know, it was, I don't know why I have such vivid memories, but I do.
That's good. Wow.
Yeah.
That would be fascinating. And I'm wondering, did you have did you suffer persecution for being Indian in that country? Do you remember that at all as a youngster?
Well, I do remember, like, growing up that I felt different, and I didn't feel like I belonged. And I don't want to say that we were targeted or persecuted per se, but we were definitely given the feeling that we were not part of not only the African culture, but then also not part of the white culture either, because we were very much a minority. And I remember growing up just feeling alone a lot, because I just didn't fit in. I just never fitted in.
So what was it like growing up as a Hindu? Tell me a little bit about the religious practices, or what your spiritual life looked like as a Hindu.
Right, so my mom, who obviously been taught by her mom and generations, right, of other Indian families, would teach me like rituals. So for example, we had like this temple made out of wood, and in that temple would be idols. Like there'd be something called like a Ganpati idol, which is the idol with the elephant head. There was a monkey picture, I remember, that's called Hanuman. And then we would light these candles, they're called diwas. And we would sit in front of this temple where you'd have these idols and pictures. There was also like Krishna. Actually, there was even Shiva, and that scared me a lot because Shiva has like a cobra around his neck. And I remember being very frightened of that. But still, I would be taught by my mom to sit in front of this temple. We would just sit cross-legged on a little pillow, and we would recite like something called a Gayatri mantra. And that Gayatri mantra I got taught as a very young child. And I remember on some weekends we'd have these rosary beads, literally like how the Catholics have those beads, but it was the same deal, except there were 108 beads. And I would sit there and chant that same mantra 108 times.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And what I was taught was to believe like these pictures, these idols would save me somehow. Like I'd be getting some kind of benefit. I didn't understand it, obviously, but that was the premise, right, of me sitting there in front of the idols. Like somehow they'd bless me and help me.
And then at age 4, let's
Yeah.
go back to that
Sure.
tragic day.
Yeah.
Tell us about that day.
Oh, Lord. So, yeah, I'm 4, and by that time we had moved away from the storefront, and we were allowed to live in this little small town. But yet again, we were living behind the store. Now, it was just a pretty hot sunny day, I remember, and I was just playing in the front with this little silver spinning top, and all of a sudden I just heard this screaming, and just I sensed panic, right? And I ran like behind the store where we lived, right? So my father was lying on the bed, and there was just blood just gushing out of his mouth. And I didn't know what happened. I remember the silver cup just right next to him. And later I would learn that my father had drunk caustic soda. And that stuff is used to clean grease off engines.
Wow.
Okay,
Oh.
that's the stuff he actually drank. And so he had tried to commit suicide at that point. And it was just panic. And I remember like my mom calling the ambulance, and you know, they took him away, and it was the gurney, and I was just running after him. I was like, Papa, Papa, you know, where are you? Like, come back, where are you going? And then all of a sudden it's just quiet. And I'm left alone, the shop is closed. My mom had left me with this strange lady. I mean, she wasn't even with me. And yeah, so I'm left alone on the steps. I remember just sitting outside and the sun beating on me, and everybody's gone. And I've just witnessed like something horrific. And I remember like, I wasn't even crying, I was just numb. And I was just rocking, right? I was just rocking back and forth, and I just remember like this warm presence come around me, like a blanket. And then I heard these words, and the words were, "It's okay, it's okay." And I just felt so comforted in that moment, like somebody was talking to me and just helping me. And that was like the first time I know that I heard the Lord. I heard God. I called him my secret God. Yeah.
Oh, Trupti, that story, it's heartbreaking all at once, obviously, with your dad. But then the comfort of the Lord, only at 4 years old, here you are.
Yeah.
And he knows, he so knows what you needed in that moment to comfort you. And you're saying, Papa, Papa, don't go. And little did you know,
I know.
your Abba
I know.
was comforting you, saying, I'm here, it's okay. And so speaking of your earthly father, I'm so grateful to hear that he did survive that suicide attempt. However, when he came home, it wasn't a bed of roses, was it?
No. Yeah, he was gone for almost a year in the hospital. and he has a tracheostomy, right? They were able to get him to breathe, and they punched through his throat, and it was kind of awful, but he at least can breathe through his throat. But the problem is he came back with a lot of rage, and he was just really angry all the time. So even though I was very, very grateful to see my father again, I would grow up in a lot of fear. Like, we didn't know. I have two brothers, and luckily they didn't see anything, but we would grow up in constant fear. I just didn't know when he would react or just get mad, like over the littlest thing. And I just remember, even at 10 years old, I remember running out of the house. It was like 8 at night, something like that, and just sitting on these steps near our apartment. We had this, now we lived above the stores in an apartment, and I just remember running out and just sitting in this dark sort of alley kind of place, you know, and I don't know, I just lived with a lot of fear and anxiety growing up. It was scary sometimes.
And that's abusive
Yeah.
to a child who can't get a sense of a stable home
Yeah.
or security in the home. It's emotionally abusive when
Yeah.
your dad raged and you never knew when or how
Yeah.
long or how much he would do that. So I can see, as we said in the beginning, your life was really very chaotic, the underpath of the tapestry.
Yeah.
But God spoke to you again at age 12. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I just remember I was riding my bicycle actually, and I was coming back home, and I heard so clearly the Lord saying to me, like, you will go out into the world. I am sending you out, and you will go and live in another country. And I remember just jolting. I was like, wow. And I don't know why, but it settled in my heart and in my mind in such a powerful way. Yeah.
My goodness. So here you are again with this comfort,
Yeah.
this voice, this
Yeah.
direction and purpose.
Yeah, I know his voice.
Yes.
I just knew it. Yeah.
And so,
Uh-huh.
yet you have this voice, and you call him your secret God, your
Yes.
secret friend. You know,
Yeah.
he's not. You don't
Yeah.
know him as Jesus yet.
No,
And so,
no clue.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
you do say that as you grew up, though, the searching obviously continued. You know, for truth and for spirituality, and even in your teens, you became involved in the occult. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like with everything going on at home, and then just trying to, find some sense of stability and truth and even identity, right? I think that was a big deal for me at that point. And there was something in me that was trying to seek something. Even I remember at 14, it started around 14, where I was like, there's something more, there's something, and I got to go find it. And at that point, I had suddenly become really smart, because at 12, I was really not very smart. I was quite average. But when the Lord told me, you're going out into the world, and I'm going to send you, I knew there was only one way to get out, and that was to get to the University of Zimbabwe, which was the only college in the whole country. And I don't know if the Lord, it must have been the Lord, because I became brilliant overnight, which to the surprise of many. So my teachers were quite surprised. And so, but I did. And during that phase, I definitely grew in intelligence and just seeking and wanting to learn more and research more. And I did get into astrology. I first started like the astrology and said, oh, well, this is my sun sign, so I must be like this. And it's like weird, because there's billions of people in the world, so how can everybody under 12, astrological signs be all the same? It just makes no sense. And now it doesn't. But then, I was really believing it. And then around 16, I just picked up a palmistry book, and then I started reading palms. I don't know how, why, and what, but I was able to just read people's palms and just know things. Yeah.
And it was like the devil began to grab onto your seeking, your desiring to know more. I mean, you're a scientist, we know that. And so you were trying to figure out the science behind all of these different things. You got deeper and deeper into witchcraft, correct?
Yeah, I think by the time I was 21, I mean, I just like, actually I graduated roughly at 21, and I do have a Bachelor of Science degree. And by that point, I had already delved deeply into astrology. I had looked into crystals. I would be at weddings, right? And people would line up, Donna and Tiffany, till like wee hours of the night, literally just wanting their palm read. So I would have probably read, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of palms by the time I was like 21 or so.
Do you
Yeah.
remember when you read the palms?
Yeah.
I mean, was
Yeah.
somebody more or less speaking through you? Did you really see something in their palms? I mean,
Yeah.
what's behind all that?
Gosh, I've got to learn it's familiar spirits, because I was able to just pick up on other spirits from that were not of God for sure, but they probably knew stuff, and I was able to communicate to them. And you know what's so interesting though is I'd read somebody's palm, and then I'd get so much information about person A, okay? And then person B would come along, and somehow I'd get very little, and I'd be like, that's odd. You know, because it was always so intermittent in terms of the knowledge I'd be able to get about somebody. And sometimes it's just brilliant. I could just tell them incredible things, and then other people be like, oh, well, I'm just not feeling it. I'm sorry, I can only tell you so much. It was very scattered sometimes.
So you
Yeah.
landed on something that was maybe a little more resolute, your science, your
Yeah.
studies.
Yeah.
And is that the schooling, is that what took you out of Zimbabwe eventually?
Pretty much. I taught for about 4 years, and then I got an opportunity to work in London. And so I grabbed it. Yeah. And what's so fascinating is the Lord, even at 21, had told me that by the time I was 30, I was to travel the world. So on top of everything else, you know, it was clear, and literally between 21 and 30, I did travel the whole world. I went to Australia and India and all over the world. I came to America. I wasn't married at that point, but I traveled everywhere as well. But I ended up in London, yes, and I worked in London. And what's fascinating is in London, I got to meet my cousin on my father's side for the very first time. And wow, the Lord works in amazing ways. He was going to get married in Charlotte, North Carolina. So he invited me to the wedding, and I literally just met him and his fiancée. And so 6 months later, where do I end up? But Charlotte, North Carolina. And then whom do I meet? I meet my future husband. And that's how I ended up here in America.
And
Yeah.
at one of these points, and I'm not sure which one,
Yeah.
you met a Lyft driver who gave you a ride somewhere.
Correct.
He was a Muslim,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And this is an amazing part of your story, so share it with the group.
Definitely. So I get married. I have 3 beautiful children. And unfortunately, I do get divorced about 13 years later. And during this whole time, this is leading up to that whole Lyft driver story, because I'm still searching, I'm still seeking, still astrology, worshiping the idols, still speaking to my Lord. I mean, I would go through other abusive situations during this time, and my marriage wasn't particularly easy. And so I still call out to the Lord. So it wasn't like at 12 and then all of a sudden, you know, I get to this stage where I meet this Lyft driver, which is a very intrinsic part of my meeting Jesus, of course. But before all that happens, the Lord is keeping me. I remember this verse in the Bible. It's Genesis 28:15, I believe. He says, I am with you, and I will go with you wherever you go, right? And that was just what was happening. And so it comes to a point now, just before I met the Lyft driver, is I would go through the series of job losses. And now after having going through what happened at 4 and then, 14 or so, I got bullied as well. And then, I had other traumatic, too many to talk about on the show, honestly. But let's just say I lived a world of anxiety, in a world of anxiety, of fear, of rejection, of abuse for decades. I mean, since I was 4 years old, okay? And now we come to this point where I'm having these job losses. I'm a single mom. And it's fascinating to me because every time I'd lose the job, I'd end up getting promoted and getting more money. And it was, okay, I love this, but I want to stay in my one job, which I was used to staying in one job for like years and years, right? So anyway, with all the instability and all that, I'm just at a stage in my life where I've just been a warrior. I've been fighting one thing after the other thing. I'm deep in the occult, and you can just imagine what that's doing to me, because see, when you do witchcraft and crystals and palmistry, anything to do with the occult, you end up on this roller coaster of deception, because you're always like, oh, there's something more. I got to learn something else. And even though most of it doesn't come true, which, you know, I would know because I looked under every rock, it sends you into a deeper and deeper pit of depression, is what it did to me. And I was just getting more and more confused in my life. And I want to really make sure that I do answer your question here, Donna. So here I am. It's the third job where I meet the Lyft driver, okay? And I'm this vice president, and, you know, I'm thinking, oh, great, you know, maybe life is going to change, and I'm powerful all of a sudden, because I'd never felt powerful in my life at that point, you know, and it felt good to an extent, but again, it was false. It's the world giving you this material hope, which at the end of the day did not help me either. So he would take me to the airport, okay, and yes, an Iranian man who was a Muslim, who had converted to Christianity, comes to my door. I'm sure sent by the Lord. Definitely. And I end up trusting him, because I have to fly like sometimes at 5 in the morning. And so I was like, okay, at least I have somebody I can trust who will take me to the airport. So I think it was about the third trip to the airport where he said to me, well, Jesus is missing from your life. And I looked at him, I was like, well, okay. And I was a little cynical, because I was like, well, you don't know my mom, and you don't know, she's so sweet and kind, and I've met Christians that have stabbed me in my back. I'm like, I don't understand your Christianity and your Christians. And then I said to him as well, I have a God, and you know, I speak to him. He's my secret God, and he talks to me. I don't think I need your Christianity. And so anyway, I resisted, he persisted. Roughly 6 months later, I lose my job. So again, I've already explained that I've just been in this dark place of just occult and confusion and job losses. I go to the Lord, and I'm like, God, I'm done. I say, I'm done. I said, what do you want from me? And I was crying, and I was on my knees, and I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm just tired, and I'm confused, and I'm lost. And I've tried to be so faithful and do whatever you want me to do, the best I knew how, right? And at that point, I get really bold, and I go to the Lord, and I say to him, okay, well, if Jesus is missing, right? If Jesus is missing, and he is the way, the truth, and the life, then you tell me, Lord. You tell me, God. Because I can only believe you, because at that point there was no way I was going to trust any person on this earth after everything had gone through. I was like, I only trust you, God, and you will tell me. Maybe this is going to fill that part of my soul. You know, I was seeking and seeking and seeking. Like, is that what's going to give me peace in my heart? Is that what's going to make everything better? And so I was bold, and I did that, and I was like, okay. And then, yes.
And then, yes.
So we must know, how did this secret God eventually reveal himself so he was no longer secret?
Wow. So for some reason, things seem to happen to me in every 6 months, but it seems to be a season thing with me. But anyway, I I go to the Lyft driver and I say, okay, fine, I'm willing to listen. So he kind of says, well, you know, read the book of John first. And I start to delve into the Bible. But for some reason, I just love the Old Testament more. And then I see all these prophecies and things that have come true over and over and over again. Like he predicted hundreds of years before King Cyrus came to be that he would, you know, he would come and what he would do. But it was just all this logic and facts, and me with my science brain, my neurons are just firing, and I'm like, wow, this Bible is just so factual and historical. And you know, I'm looking at it from an objective standpoint, really, right? Because I'm not a Christian yet. So for me, it's just fascinating. And I remember so, you know, I'd get some guidance from him. I didn't get to see him a lot at all, but, you know, just some guidance. And then I'd meet Christians, and I don't know, but I would just go up to, like if it was you, and I'd say, well, how do you know Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life? And they'd look at me and they'd be like, well, he is, you know, the Bible says so. But I'd be like, no, but how do you know? I had to know here, right?
Yes, yes.
And so 3 months into my journey, I meet this lovely lady, Jan, and she gives me this book called More Than a Carpenter by Sean McDowell. Now, talk about facts and just ability to take that Bible and show, like, in such a powerful way how truthful the Bible is. And then I think what really got me was when he said, in the Bible, the exact address was of where Jesus would be born was predicted like thousands of years ago. I was like, wow. And then I just got more interested in Jesus now. Now it is not, it's just from the Bible to Jesus, even though I'm on a Jesus journey, right? And I watched Jesus being crucified, the Passion of the Christ, and it was so hard to watch. And I remember I was home alone. It was nighttime, and I was watching, and like I was just crying. It was almost like I was there with him, and and then I spoke to my God, and I said, well, why would they do this? Why would they do this to Jesus, right? Like I didn't understand it fully, but when I heard Jesus say, forgive them for they do not know what they do, something just solidified in me. And I was like, wow, like this is unconditional love. Like we're just wicked, wretched people, and you know, he will still die for us. And that really got me. But at the same time, even with all that, you would think I'd accept Jesus, right? You would think that. But oh no, I'm so stubborn. And so why? Because I had not heard from my sacred God. He had not told me, right? It had to be him and him only, no matter what happened and what I saw on earth, right? And what I was even exposed to. And yet, as much as I started loving the Bible and so fascinated by how factual and truthful it was, and even seeing Jesus on the cross, it would have to come to a point where the Lord would have to tell me himself.
And he did, right?
And he did. So I go to my very first Bible study, you know, and it's this little quaint house in Frisco. And I walk in, and you know how I was when I was in the cult more, and I still was at that point, you know, realistically. I felt a different energy that I'd never felt before, right? Because I was just used to the spiritual world and just sensing things and just feeling things. This house was so full of just crosses. It was like a holy energy, and I was like, you know, immediately akin to, there was something different here. So it was lovely, and they sang, and then they read out of the Bible and something about tent worshiping, and I was like, oh, okay, this is just wonderful, and I'm just fascinated, and I'm just loving it, you know, and learning, you know, totally a clueless Christian, but just learning. And so what happens is we're done with the Bible prayer and all that, and we're holding hands like this. And everybody starts to just pray, like you'll pray and you'll pray for your family or whatever it is. So it comes to my turn. Oh, and at that point, I was so desperate. You know, when I'd gone to the Lord 6 months ago and said, Lord, you tell me if Jesus is the way, the truth, and life. And now it's almost 6 months later, and I haven't found the answer. And during that time, sometimes the Lord was not as close to me for whatever reason. And it just, I was like, where are you? I need to know and tell me. Because I had to know the answer. I had to, and I knew He had it. So I'm here holding hands, and I look up, and I'm in tears. And I'm like, tell me. That's all I said. Oh my Lord. And in that moment, I got thrown back. I got thrown back on the sofa behind me, and I'm literally stuck on the sofa like this, and I'm speaking this new language. What I got to learn was speaking in tongues, and I'm speaking in my hand, and I put my hand up like this, and I feel something touch it. And so I look up like this, and wow, there is Jesus.
Wow. Wow, what a story. He answered your prayer. I want to touch on two things that you said.
Yeah.
One thing you said is that you asked Christians,
Yeah.
how do you know Jesus is real?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's one of my key questions that in our testimony workshop, I want people to be able to effectively answer that question.
Yeah.
Yes, you can say because the Bible tells us so, but it is so much more effective when you can say the reason I know Jesus is real is because He changed me.
Yes.
I saw the difference He made in my life where I was angry all the time. Now I don't feel that anger. Where I was jealous, now I never feel jealousy of others. When Jesus comes into your life, He changes you, and that's how you know He's real, even more so than because the Bible. If someone
Yeah.
had shared a personal testimony
Right.
or two with you at that point, that would have been answering the question that you were
Right.
asking about how you know Jesus is real. Then the second thing I want to comment on is, so you're coming out of a grocery store or somewhere, I
Yeah.
forgot where you were coming out
Oh.
of, and you meet a lady in the parking lot that
Yes.
you do not know. You engage in conversation with her for just a few minutes, and she says to you, I have a book in my car for
Yes.
you. And she goes and she gets More Than a Carpenter by
Yeah.
Josh McDowell, and
Yeah.
she gives it to you.
Right.
Well, I don't know how many years later, maybe 4, 5, 6 years later, you and I are at a ladies' luncheon,
Yes.
and I brought as my guest this lady, Jan,
Yes.
Jan Ritchie,
Yes.
and you're coming to the luncheon, and you're sitting across the table from the lady who gave you More Than a Carpenter. You don't realize it right away
No.
until I introduce you and mention Jan's last name, and then I'll never forget the look on your face. Jan Ritchie, you're the one who gave me that book. And you get
know.
reunited with the lady who had a really turning point in your life, and it was so beautiful to watch that, how God orchestrated that reunion so
Oh.
you can meet as a believer. She gave you the book. She never knew that you gave your life to Christ.
She did not.
Until at that luncheon when you tell her, it was because you gave me that book. I prayed to receive Jesus, and now my life is changed. I'm a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ, and part of the reason is because you gave me that book. And I watched what happened between the two of you at that luncheon table. And
Yeah.
in fact, Tiffany was singing
Oh,
at
yeah.
that luncheon.
Yeah,
She actually
beautiful.
opened that luncheon with
Yeah.
song. And to watch that reunion take place, I'll never forget that. That was so amazing. So
Yes.
you read that book.
Yes.
You saw the Passion of the Christ, and then at this ladies' Bible study,
Yeah.
God reveals Himself to you in probably
Yes.
maybe the only way that you would have recognized Him, because being in the occult, there were all these signs and wonders. There were all these manifestations
Yeah.
of spirits, but God showed you who He was in a way that you finally recognized Him, and you prayed to receive Him as your Lord and Savior.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I didn't know about the Holy Spirit, and it was the Holy Spirit that, had come over me. And as a scientist too, and only believing in the Lord though, right? He knew I wanted proof. You see, the Lord gives you exactly what you need.
Right. To
And for
receive Him.
Him to receive Him. And for me, it was the perfect way is for me to see Jesus. I mean, and me, Miss Facts and Data, right?
Yeah.
I saw facts and data. I know that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
Yes.
I know.
Right.
No one ever convinced me otherwise, because not only have absolute truth on earth when I saw Him, and if you think about it, I went to God Himself and asked Him that question,
Yes.
is Jesus the way, the truth, and the life?
Yes.
And 6 months later, He proves it to me in such a dramatic, incredible way
Yes.
from God Himself. You can't dispute that.
That and God chose you from the time you were a small child, and
Yeah.
at different times in your life, He really spoke to you.
Yeah.
He never let you go, even though you went off on the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, into all that occult and witchcraft and palm reading
Scientology and any way I could try and find some truth, and I'd go into any rock, Donna
and He
Tiffany, any
never
rock.
let you go.
That's right.
He,
No.
He knew before the beginning of the earth
Yeah.
that you were going to be His. So in the final moments that we have,
Yeah.
what would you like to leave with the audience today?
I just want to let you know that Jesus is truly the way, the truth, and the life. And I'm not just saying that because, it's something a Christian would, maybe typically say. I chased after Jesus. I chased after the truth. Like my whole life, I chased after finding this truth. And as Donna and Tiffany said as well, it's like I looked under every rock. So there is no place that I can think of that I could have looked under, because I did a lot of research and looking. So I want you to understand that you must not take these words lightly. And after accepting Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and now walking truly and following Jesus, not just accepting Him, but following Him, my life has transformed. Like Donna said, tell people about your testimony. Tell them like how it changed your life. I didn't have a job for those 6 months I was searching for Jesus, and somehow the Lord just provided. Literally 2 weeks after I got saved, out of the blue, somebody calls me and says, I have a job for you. And best boss, best everything, like ever. And I've been at that job ever since, and I'm just so blessed to have such wonderful, godly people that I work with as well. And not only that, like things would change in my family. For sure, things changed in my heart. Like that seeking, that emptiness that was in my soul, it was filled. I didn't have to go look and look and look anymore. I got what I wanted. I got that peace, that love that I needed so desperately. I needed it after everything I had gone through. And not only that, I mean, your life becomes more full. Not only is there peace, but when you follow Jesus, you end up being on this incredible adventure, like I am sitting right now talking to you, where He just makes life, I don't want to say life is just always easy, but it makes it easier. And you just know that you can count on Jesus, and He will be there for you. I just know it. And by the way, He always is.
And we want you to know Jesus as well. If there's never been a time in your life when you reached out to Him and said, I want to receive you, I want to experience what Trupti is talking about, we pray that today is the day. You don't have to be in a fancy place. You don't have to say any fancy words. Just tell God that you would like Him to fully reveal himself to you in a way that you will see him, you will understand, and you will be able to receive him and all he has for you. And you know, you talk about all the ways that he changed you and all the things that he gives you. The thing I'm most grateful for is he gives us a sense of purpose.
Yes.
We know why we're here.
Right.
We know that if we can introduce somebody else to him, we've done exactly what he wanted, and he is pleased. Now, I know that Trupti would respond to you if she said anything. If you know somebody who's stuck in all the ways of the devil, all the false truths, following this and that and searching, she would be happy to connect with them. You can reach Trupti at truptidesai@gmail.com. I'm going to spell that. It's TRUPTIH at Desai, DESAI, it's on the screen, at gmail.com. Reach out to Trupti, and we'd love to hear from you as well. You can reach us at info@roaringlambs.org. info@roaringlambs.org. Hope you like our shows. We find fascinating people who have amazing stories, amazing testimonies, and we share them with you. So we want you to make a difference. Go share your story with someone else today. Go out and roar about the goodness of God.
At Life Stories Company, our passion is to preserve your story in a personal memoir. These beautiful books can be shared with both friends and family for generations. For the past 28 years, we have helped over 200 clients share their history and wisdom. As a Christian, what better testimony than to share how God has led you and provided for you? Visit us at lifestoriescompany.com. Sharing your story and honoring God, lifestoriescompany.com.